Hi guys, welcome to Little Wicket Railway. I'm Rob, and in this video we're looking at Hornby's brand new range of HM7000 Bluetooth decoders. The HM7000 system and the decoders were a bit of a shock when they were announced in Hornby's 2023 product range back in January. Hornby are producing 21-pin, next 18-pin and 8-pin decoders both in sound and non-sound, and a 6-pin non-sound version as well. These decoders are coming in to replace Hornby's older range of decoders, and on paper they are a significant improvement. Plus they've got some features that make them stand out compared to other decoders on the market from other manufacturers. All of them can be controlled and updated via Bluetooth using Hornby's free app. For the sound decoders, you can download different sound profiles and upload them to the decoder, again all for free using the app. And they feature sockets for easy connection to speakers and power banks, so there's no need for any soldering. When these were first announced, I thought they were going to be a game changer for digital control, and I have been eagerly awaiting their release. And from mid-March 2023, they have become available. I've got one of the 8-pin versions for us to take a closer look at and to test out all the features. We'll start by controlling it using a standard DCC controller, and then we'll move on to controlling it via Bluetooth and the app. I've also got a power bank which Hornby claim will keep the model running for up to 9 seconds if it loses contact with the track, so we can put that to the test as well. We'll run through some of the documentation that's available, try changing some of the settings, and we'll also have a go with some of the more advanced features. I'll also be comparing it to the old TTS decoder so we can see how much of an improvement these new decoders are. And having reviewed the product, we'll take a look at the price to see whether it represents good value and how the cost compares to other decoders on the market. This is going to be a longer video, so I'll split it into chapters so that you can jump around, and if you do find it useful, then please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Okay, let's get started. So I've got the new decoder here, the power bank and the old TTS decoder, and the first thing to say is that this box is huge. It's more than double the size of the old TTS box. How big are these decoders? Although they've made use of all that space on the box because we've got tons of information here. You can tell it's a sound decoder because it's got the TXS logo up here in the corner, which stands for triple X or triple times sound, which I believe means it has the ability to play 3 sounds at once. Whereas the older sound decoders were TTS or twin track sound, so could only manage 2 sounds at the same time. So that's already an improvement, and here it says that the sounds are high fidelity, so we can expect some nice clear sound effects. Here it says it's the 8-pin version and that there are 3 ways we can run it, either via the app, via DCC, or even with a DC controller. Here they're bragging about one of their key features, that you can instantly read and write the configuration variables or CVs on the decoder using the app. And they're right to brag. This is a big deal and will make adjusting settings on the decoder a lot easier. Last but certainly not least in terms of importance, they confirm that the decoder conforms to all the relevant NMRA standards when used with DCC. NMRA stands for National Model Railroad Association, and these guys have created a set of standards to make sure that all DCC products that follow their standards will work together. So if you've got an NMRA compliant DCC controller, then you can be reassured that this decoder will work with that controller. On the back it shows the contents of the box, so we're going to get the decoder, a sugar cube speaker and 7 speaker enclosures to choose from, and presumably that's why the box is so big. Then we've got all the info repeated in foreign languages down here. Up in the corner we've got the QR code that will take you to the HM7000 app in either the Apple or Android App Store. However, as of March 2023, only the Apple iOS version is available. Apparently the Android version is going to be another 4 weeks, so that's late April 2023, and even then the app may not work with all devices. And this is important to know before you buy it because the app is actually pretty essential, and I'll talk more about that later. Here it says that all sound profiles are free in bold capital letters, and they're quite right to highlight that. Hornby could easily have decided to charge you a couple of quid every time you wanted a new sound profile, but they've been very generous and they're giving them away for absolutely nothing. Apparently the decoder comes with a sound profile for an A1 preloaded, which is why I've got this A1 TTS decoder to compare it against later. But all the other sound profiles are available on the app. And now you see why the app is rather important if you want your sound decoder to go in anything other than an A1. And here's the QR code that takes you to the full manual. We'll take a look at this later, but I've already had a sneak peek and it's very comprehensive. So the box is making some big promises here and it all looks good on paper, but let's open it up and start playing with it. I've emptied the box and spread everything out so you can see it, but the first thing I've noticed is that we seem to have 2 versions of the quick start guide. But this one looks like it's in German, so I think we can discard it, and let's start by having a look at the English version. So this bit is telling you how to download and connect the app via Bluetooth to the decoder, and there's some compliance stuff at the bottom. And I've just realised that this is the back of the quick start guide because we're already on step 4. So if we turn it over, we've got a guide to the 3 different types of sound decoder at the top, then some info about power supplies, connecting a power bank and installing the speaker. Feel free to pause and have a read if you want to, but I'm going to move on and open up the decoder. The decoder comes in one of these anti-static bags, which is great, and it's a good reminder to ground yourself before touching any electronics, especially when the electronics are fully exposed on the decoder like they are here, and this has surprised me a bit. A lot of modern decoders come shrink wrapped to protect the components on the board and to ensure that if you were to put this in a loco which have metal bodywork, or if you're putting the decoder close to the motor for example, that there's no chance of the two accidentally coming into contact and creating a connection that would damage the decoder. Maybe this is a conscious decision because the decoder needs to be able to dissipate heat effectively, but I still think I'd wrap it in a bit of Kapton tape just to be sure. Let's quickly measure the decoder using the calipers, and it's coming up around 14mm wide and 30mm long. So it's not the smallest decoder in the world, but it's not particularly large either. And whilst we've got the calipers out, let's measure the wires on the 8-pin harness, and they're coming in at around 70mm long. It's nice to see that pin 1 is clearly marked on the plug, and that will help to make sure that the decoder goes into the socket the right way round. And here on the side of the decoder, we've got the 2-pin connection for the speaker and the 3-pin connection for the power bank. The decoder comes with a declaration of conformity to confirm that it complies with the requirements of the Radio Equipment Directive. Feel free to have a study, but it's not particularly interesting. Now let's open up the sugar cube speaker, so called because it's not much bigger than a sugar cube. I'm so glad that Hornby decided to go with these smaller speakers because they're going to fit in almost every model, whereas the old round speakers often didn't fit. And because the old speakers were hardwired to the decoder, if you wanted to change them for something smaller or better, then that meant soldering. Whereas these come pre-wired with a plug on the end so they can easily be swapped. Let's give the speaker a measure, and without any enclosure on it, it measures about 15mm by 11mm. Another cool feature is that when you do come to add an enclosure, you don't need to mess around with any glue because all you do is peel off this white sticker and that will leave adhesive on the speaker that you can press the enclosure onto. I suspect these speakers are 8 ohms, but let's just check with the multimeter to make sure. And this one is coming up at 7 ohms, so not far off. If you do want to replace these speakers, you'll need to look for an 8 ohm speaker. Now let's see how easy it is to plug this into the decoder. So that was pretty easy and it feels quite secure. I don't think there's much chance of it just coming out accidentally. Also, the wire that comes with the speaker is nice and long, measuring in at 15cm, and that'll come in useful when the speaker needs to be located a bit further away from the decoder. Finally, let's open up the enclosures. So we've got the 7 options here to attach your speaker to, from the pretty small to the quite large. Hornby recommends you select the largest one that will fit into the model because a larger chamber will result in a better sound. I'm not going to stick one onto my speaker just yet until I know exactly what size I need. But it should be as simple as peeling off the sticker and pressing it against the enclosure like so. So that's the contents of the box, and I suppose it's time we actually put the decoder in a locomotive. I've got my model of Tornado here. This is the non-runner that I salvaged from the flea market and fixed up. I'll put a link to that video up in the corner if you want to check it out. I thought this might be a good choice because firstly, it's got an 8-pin socket and we've got an 8-pin decoder. Secondly, it's an A1 and I believe the default sound profile is for an A1. Thirdly, despite Hornby selling TTS sound decoders for A1s and even a decoder specifically for Tornado, the 28mm round speakers that came with these decoders didn't actually fit in the models. You needed to desolder the round speaker and put on a sugar cube speaker that would fit up here in the smoke box. And as someone who isn't very good at soldering, I found this incredibly frustrating. So fingers crossed the new decoder with the smaller speaker and the selection of enclosures will fit perfectly. And my fourth and final reason for choosing Tornado as our test loco is because I found that despite having pickups on 6 wheels, in my experience there's something about these models that mean they lose connection very easily. So it's a perfect candidate for the power bank if we can fit it in. So the first thing I'm going to do is choose my speaker enclosure. As I said, the speaker goes into the smoke box and there's quite a bit of space in there, so I could probably choose one of these larger enclosures, but I want to make sure there's room for the power bank too when we add that later, so I'm going to sacrifice some speaker size to make sure that I've still got room and go with one of the smaller ones. Let's give this one a go. I'm going to twist it off the spur, then remove the sticker on the speaker and press them together. I've given it a couple of minutes for the adhesive to stick, and let's just check that it fits into the smoke box. And yeah, it's a good fit, and hopefully there's still enough room for the power bank. Now let's plug the decoder into the socket. The location for pin 1 is marked on the socket, so we can make sure pin 1 on the decoder harness matches up, and that means it goes in this way round. I think the obvious place for the decoder is lying flat on top here, but as I've said, there's potential for the exposed components to touch the socket, so I'm going to wrap it in Kapton tape and then hold it in place with some black tack. The other thing to be aware of is this loose purple wire, and don't worry, that's not come off anything. This is what Hornby are calling a flying wire, and it's for the 4th hardware function output on the decoder. It's unlikely that I'll be using this wire, so I'm just going to cut it short and tape it down out of the way. That's the loco ready to run. I'm not going to put the body back on yet because we're going to need to access the decoder again shortly to add the power bank, and this whole video is about the decoder, so we might as well have it on screen. Before we play around with the new Bluetooth functionality, let's just get it running on conventional DCC. I've got my rolling road here and it's connected up to the Hornby Select DCC controller. If I put Tornado on the rollers, make sure the Select is on address 3, which is the default address for these decoders, and turn up the throttle, then we should see some movement. There we go, and the decoder is working. If we select function 1 on the decoder, then that should turn on the sounds. And given how small that speaker is, it's sounding nice and loud. And let's just try function 2, which is the whistle. And that's all sounding really good. So whilst this is running, let's talk about functions. Each of the HM7000 sound decoders supports up to 29 functions, depending on the decoder type and the sound profile you've installed. And the non-sound decoders support up to 9 functions. For the sound decoders, functions 1 to 20 are all sound functions, whereas functions 0 and 20 to 28 are all physical functions that either control lights or trigger physical actions in the behaviour of the decoder operation. The non-sound decoders obviously only have the physical functions. You can't change or remap the function numbers to do different things. They're fixed on these decoders. In the manual, there's a list of what each of the functions does, and I'll put those on screen now. Each sound profile is different depending on the type of locomotive, and some might not have sounds for every function number, but there are some things that are consistent across all of them. For example, F2 is almost always sounding the horn. I believe that when you upload the sound profile in the app, each of the functions will be populated with the relevant description, and we'll take a look at that later. Some of the function buttons will activate hardware function outputs, or HFOs. These are used to control lights or raise and lower pantographs, for example. Each decoder has a different number of HFOs. This 8-pin decoder only supports 4 HFOs. The 21-pin decoder supports 10 HFOs, but it looks like only 6 can be accessed via conventional DCC. The rest are available using the Bluetooth controller. Similarly, the next 18 decoder supports 6 HFOs, but only 4 can be used with DCC. The non-sound 8-pin decoder only supports front and rear lighting plus 1 auxiliary, and the non-sound 6-pin only supports front and rear lighting with no auxiliaries. In terms of function control, it's pretty standard that F0 will turn the front and rear directional lighting on and off if you have it. Those are considered to be hardware function outputs 1 and 2. The other auxiliary HFOs are on function buttons 21 to 24. You might have seen that functions 25 to 28 control some pretty interesting sounding features such as shunt mode, creep mode, active braking and automatic spot sound play. Depending on the sound profile you have, you might have seen that there was a diesel cold start function or a wheel slip function, and we'll take a quick look at some of this more advanced stuff later. But now it's time to test out the Bluetooth technology. Tornado is still on the rolling road and it's still connected to the DCC system, so the track still has power. But we're not going to use the select to control the loco. This time I've got my iPhone and I'm going to use the app. I've already been to the Apple Store to download and install the HM7000 app, so let's open it up and see what happens. When the app opens, you've got the option to watch some tutorials or log in. The Hornby HM7000 tutorials are coming out at the moment on YouTube, so go check those out, but we're going to log straight in. To log in, you'll need the same email address and password that you use to access the Hornby website. So if you haven't registered on the Hornby website, then you'll need to do that first. Once you've logged in, go straight to the control screen, and if this is your first time opening the app, then it'll say that you've got no linked devices. So I'm going to press the link device button and try to find my decoder. In the link device screen, we hit start scan and it'll begin looking for decoders. Quite quickly, my decoder appears in the ready to link area, but if you try to click on it before the scan finishes, you'll receive an error. So just wait until it's completed the scan, then click on the ready to link box. It then attempts to link to the device, which takes a few seconds. If this is the first time that the decoder has been linked, you'll most likely have to update the firmware. Click the start update button to do that, which took a few minutes. Press done and it'll detect that the decoder already has a profile installed, so offers to fetch the latest function map for that profile. Once it's done that, you remove the loco from the power supply for 5 seconds, which involves just lifting it off the track. If you've got a power bank connected, you'll have to disconnect it for longer, around a minute, to give it time to drain the power bank and fully reset. Now we're in the locomotive settings on the data tab, and the top box has a space for the image of your loco. So let's add one of those by taking a photo. You'll have to allow the app access to your camera for this, but it's a really cool feature and an easy way to know exactly which loco you're working with. Then we can give it a name, so let's call it Tornado. You can also set the loco address here, but we'll leave it on 3 for now. There are a few settings below here. You can decide if you want to control it via Bluetooth or DCC, make the vehicle active or inactive, change acceleration and deceleration rates, set the global volume for the sounds, and import and export function maps and browse the profiles. But before we do any of that or look at the function tab or the advanced CV tab, let's find out if this actually works as a controller. So if we back out of the locomotive settings screens into the control screen, then we can see in the top left that we've got one device connected, and below we can see the address, the name and the photo. So it's really easy to see which loco you're controlling. You've got buttons that will take you into the loco settings, or you can manage the decoder, but directly below that we've got the speed controller. So let's turn it up and see if Tornado moves. Below the speed controller, we've got direction control with brake and stop buttons. And talking of stop buttons, we've also got the button in the top right hand corner, which will stop the entire layout. At the bottom of the screen, we've got 3 pages of functions, and you can see that they're all named, so you don't have to remember what each function number does. The profile that's been imported has labelled them all for you. So let's try turning the sounds on. Along the bottom, you've got 4 menu options. The first is control with the joystick image. The next is for accessories such as signals, points, etc. Then you've got your layout builder. And finally the cog image, which takes you into the settings screen. Here you can access your devices and manage the device settings. Here you can find the device health check, see what's installed on the decoder, update the firmware, see which loco it's assigned to, and there's a button to unlink it. You can go into your engine shed and manage your locomotive settings. This is the page we've already seen with the general settings, but if we click on the functions tab, then it's in here that you can see your 3 pages of functions, and you can actually drag these around so that your most used functions are on page 1, for example. It's slightly irritating that the icons on screen don't fit in the boxes, but I think that can be overlooked. The Advanced CV Editor tab is where you can access the full range of configuration variables. Reading the full range is very quick, and updating them is almost instantaneous. Most of the more advanced functionality is accessed from here, such as consist settings and asynchronous braking, but it's an area to take a bit of care in, and you don't want to go changing CVs unless you're sure you know what you're doing. Then going back to the main settings screen, you'll find general settings for the app and some help and support resources. But one of the most exciting things about these decoders is that you can change the sound profiles. So let's go back into the engine shed, select our loco and scroll down to Browse Profiles. The app will now load up all of the available profiles. Featured profiles are at the top, followed by a complete list, and then categories for steam, diesel electric and diesel. Back in January, a list of 31 sound profiles was shown, but it doesn't look like all of these are currently available. So hopefully the full range will become available in time. The button at the top called Open Installed Profile will show you what's currently installed, so at the moment we've got the A1A3 installed, but let's change this to a Class 43 HST with the MTU engine. Click the Install Locomotive profile and the app will update the memory on the decoder with the required information. This is a two-step process. Updating the AP ROM takes about 10 seconds, but updating the SPI ROM takes about 10 minutes. Once that's installed, you need to reset the decoder by lifting it off the track again. Then you need to import the running profile, followed by another reset, then import the function map. And in theory, you're ready to go. However, in the control screen you can see that when I move the throttle, nothing happens, and the sound functions don't work either. And if I scroll up, it says, a problem has been detected with your device. This issue can be diagnosed via the device health check section on the Manage Device screen. If you click the Manage Device button, then you can see that it's saying that the sound data is missing and that I need to reinstall the profile to fix the issue, which is obviously quite frustrating because it takes about 15 minutes. On this occasion, I decided to reinstall the A1A3 profile and that worked. During the course of making this video, I attempted to install 6 sound profiles and encountered the error 3 times. So that's a 50% failure rate, which I don't really think is acceptable. On the second time of trying the Class 43, I did manage to get it to work. I couldn't tell you why this has been happening, and I'd be interested to know if you've experienced the same issue. And whilst we're on the subject of issues, I did find that on more than one occasion after an upload, the sounds would all work okay, but the motor wouldn't react until I reset the decoder again. Here I've turned the throttle up and the sounds are indicating that the decoder thinks it's moving, but the motor isn't turning. I thought the motor might need a bit of help to get started, so I tried moving the flywheel, but the motor isn't even attempting to move. I tried changing direction and changing speed on the app, but nothing seems to help. Lifting the loco off the track to reset the decoder was the only option. Also here you can see how quickly the decoder reconnects via Bluetooth if it loses power. It's actually pretty quick, and you can see from the timer it's about 8 seconds, and that when it reconnects, the motor starts turning again. All very strange, and I can't work out why this is happening. It could be specific to my loco, but again, please let me know if you've experienced anything similar. So that's a bit about the app, and we've got the loco running on Bluetooth now, and there were a few tests I wanted to do. The first test I've already done, and that was to see how long it took to reconnect to the app once it lost contact with the track, and we saw that that was around 8 or 9 seconds. That's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but I suppose it's not particularly good either. The second test I wanted to do was see what the range of the Bluetooth connection was like. So I actually left the room and went to the other side of the house, which I reckon was about 10 or 15 meters away with a few walls in between, and it didn't lose connection. I was still able to control the locomotive, so I don't think there's going to be any problems there. During the course of testing, the app never once lost signal with the decoder, and from what I've read, the more accessories and decoders that you have in your Bluetooth network, the more reliable and stable the connection is, because each of those decoders acts as a node within the Bluetooth mesh, and the more nodes you have, the stronger your mesh is. Apparently 999 devices can be connected to the app. Obviously, I've only got the one decoder, so I wasn't able to put that to the test. For the third test, I wanted to try out the power bank. These power banks retail for around £15, which makes them a bit more expensive than other stay-alives on the market, but they are pre-fitted with the plug. This is a smart power bank, and the manual says it will only charge whilst the loco is in motion, such that it doesn't disrupt the reading or writing of CVs if you were to put it on a programming track. It's made up of 3 supercapacitors which can hold quite a large charge, so it's a good idea to make sure they're fully discharged or disconnected before working on a model. Fitting the power bank using the plug is really easy. Hornby have used a 3-pin plug to stop you accidentally plugging it into the speaker socket. Hornby say these take 2 minutes to fully charge and can keep the loco running for up to 9 seconds. This has been charging up for a few minutes. We'll lift the model off the track and see how long it takes for the wheels to stop turning. And whilst it's not connected to the track and running off the power bank, I'll see if I can still control the decoder via the app by sounding the whistle. So that was pretty much bang on the 9 seconds that Hornby said we could expect before the motor cut out. If you've got the space, then you'll probably want to add in a power bank, especially if you want to use Bluetooth control to avoid that 8 or 9 second reconnection delay that happens if the model loses power. And whilst we're on the subject of power, there are a few different ways that you can power your track and use these decoders. You can use a standard DCC controller like I've been doing with the Hornby Select, and this allows you to use standard DCC fitted locomotives alongside the Bluetooth decoder fitted locomotives as well. You can use a standard analog controller with the power turned all or most of the way up, but Hornby does warn that not all analog power supplies are suitable, and this obviously means that if you've got any other analog locomotives on the layout, you wouldn't be able to use those at the same time because they'd be running around at full power. You can use a normal DC power supply, and Hornby recommend using their own. They even sell an adapter to connect the power supply to the track. The reason Hornby recommend their own is because they're comfortable that they've got safety features built in to deal with short circuits. But in theory, you could use any DC power supply of the correct voltage. So you've got a few different options there for providing power to the track for these decoders. So let's talk about some of the more advanced features that come with these decoders, starting with motor speed control. Not only do the HM7000 decoders come with basic speed control with CVs 2, 5 and 6, where you can control the start, mid and high voltage, but they also come with a full 27-step speed table. This allows you to create a full speed curve and is a more sophisticated way of controlling how the motor responds to commands. You wouldn't have been able to do either of these things on the old TTS decoder. The other settings that heavily influence how the motor responds to commands are the back EMF settings. These can be configured manually on the HM7000 decoder, but Hornby have also realised that setting these can be a bit tricky, so they've put in place an auto calibration option as well. And this is a feature that we generally see on more high-end decoders. These decoders also respond to asymmetrical DCC signals, sometimes known as ABC braking. I made a video on this and I'll put a link to that in the top corner which explains how it works, but essentially it allows you to set the decoder up to do some very basic automation such as automated braking or doing shuttles. The decoders have active or manual braking which allows you to press a button and it will apply the brakes, and the effectiveness of those brakes can be changed in the settings to simulate more effective or less effective braking. Shunt mode is a function that can be activated and drops the speed of the loco by a fixed percentage. That percentage can be set by the user, and this is to help with slow speed control when doing shunting operations. Creep mode or coupling assist mode is a function that is designed to help you couple up with wagons or coaches. You bring the locomotive to a stop just short of what you want to couple up to, you activate the function, the locomotive will move for a set duration at a set speed and hopefully automatically couple up to those wagons or coaches. The speed and duration can be set by the user. You can set up consists or double headers by linking decoders together. You can use auto function control to play random spot sounds at intervals between 25 and 36 seconds. So you might configure it to randomly play coal shoveling sounds, for example, and things like this just help to bring the layout to life. You can set up automatic wheel slip, so if you accelerate too quickly, the wheel slip sound will play and the loco won't move until you've reduced your speed. You can set up automatic cold start so that if you start a diesel engine, then it will play a cranking sound for an appropriate amount of time before the engine kicks in. So that's a quick overview of some of the more advanced features on these decoders. And just to highlight how much more advanced these decoders are over the old TTS sound decoders, I've put together this table. As you can see, the old TTS decoders were pretty featureless, and that these new HM7000 decoders really do represent a significant step forward. And these advanced features are the type of thing you would expect to see on decoders that cost £100 plus. But the HM7000 decoders are significantly cheaper than that. The non-sound decoders are selling for between £30 and £40, and I think that's at the top end of what I would be prepared to pay for a non-sound decoder. But you're paying for the Bluetooth technology. If you're not interested in the Bluetooth side of things, then there are better value decoders on the market. But the sound decoders are good value whether you plan to use the Bluetooth functionality or not. These retail for around £60. They're a bit more expensive than the TTS decoders used to be, but they are cheaper than Soundtracks, for example, and they're significantly cheaper than an ESU lock sound. An ESU lock sound decoder will retail for around £120 with a sound profile already uploaded onto it. But if down the line you want to change the sound profile on that decoder, you'll more than likely have to pay someone to upload the new sound profile onto it for you. Whereas as we've seen with Hornby's new decoders, you can do this yourself using the app for free, and that is a major advantage. So overall, I think the sound decoders especially are excellent value. So that's an overview of the new HM7000 decoders from Hornby. Overall, I'm incredibly impressed, and these are a major step up from their previous decoders. They're obviously not perfect. I experienced problems when uploading the sound profile and then with the motor not turning unless it was reset. but I'm hoping these are software issues and that they can be resolved by the time that the Android app is launched. They're also quite bulky decoders and may not fit in all locomotives, so make sure you measure up before you order. And if you're going to use the Bluetooth functionality, then you might want to invest in the power banks to eliminate those reconnection delays. 8 or 9 seconds if it's just going to happen once in a blue moon, not too bad. If it's going to happen regularly, it would get quite frustrating. But I think the pros more than outweigh the cons. These are very affordable, feature-rich decoders that offer a high level of flexibility in how they can be used, especially when it comes to uploading and switching sound profiles. It's great to see Hornby pushing the boundaries of technology again. I hope that they continue to support this and develop it over a number of years and continue adding to the number of sound profiles that are available to be downloaded. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you've had a chance to try these out yourself. If you found this video useful, then please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and special thanks to my channel members and patrons for their support. It's very much appreciated. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you again soon.